It is now confirmed that studio director Joe Burba and executive producer Susan Kath were among the 213 people laid off from ZeniMax Online Studios last week. Hey everyone, it's Spobes. Yes, it is now confirmed that Joe Burba, who had only been the studio head at ZOS for just over a year, and Susan Kath, who had just taken the limelight recently alongside Nick Giacomini in reveals and other content, are joining studio game director Rich Lambert in leaving ZeniMax Online Studios. They will no longer be working on The Elder Scrolls Online. They are part of the recent layoffs. In this video, I'm going to cover a couple different articles on this subject and discuss what it means that Joe Burba is now gone when he just became the director last July. He was there about 12 and a half months. He's already gone. Also, what it means that Susan Kath is gone, what this all means for the studio in general. We're also going to cover claims from a laid-off developer the studio cannot produce the same amount of content it did before, and provide some overall analysis on what likely is coming next for The Elder Scrolls Online. Before we get into it, please like, hype, and sub, and consider upgrading your support with a membership, a merch purchase, or a donation. So yes, it's official. GameFile just published a report yesterday, based on exclusive information they obtained, that Joe Burba and Susan Kath are out at ZOS. Let's go ahead and read through this article, then I'm going to provide my analysis. ZeniMax Online Studios leadership to exit as part of Xbox cuts. There are major changes happening atop Maryland-based ZeniMax Online Studios, developer of The Elder Scrolls Online, GameFile has learned. Joe Burba, a 14-year veteran of the studio who was appointed to run it last July, is departing, along with ESO executive producer Susan Kath, studio game director Rich Lambert, and production director Ala Diaz. Their roles were listed among hundreds of others cut last week from the Maryland offices of ZeniMax, in a warn letter sent to the state by ZeniMax and obtained by GameFile. And it's amazing to me they haven't fixed this yet, but this typo, I found it to be funnier than I probably should have, but they say tonight, Burba, Kath, Lambert, and Diaz notified ZeniMax Online Studios workers of plans to transition to a new leadership team consisting of promoted ZOS veterans. So Burba Kath is apparently some weird conjunction of Joe Burba and Susan Kath. That transition will occur over the next few months, they told workers, according to a copy of the notice reviewed by GameFile. Quote, "We will remain in place during the transition period to help ensure a smooth handoff. We will see if that is actually possible." Last week, Microsoft laid off 1,600 workers across its vast gaming teams in locations around the US and abroad. Just who has been impacted and how hard various studios have been hit has been emerging day by day. GameFile reported last week that Microsoft ZeniMax notified officials in Maryland that 379 gaming jobs are being cut across the state. They tallied cuts in 2 locations, one for ZeniMax Media, that's Bethesda, and one for ZeniMax Online Studios, creators of The Elder Scrolls Online. More than 200 jobs were cut at the latter. Last week's totals did not reveal job titles, nor did Microsoft announce any leadership changes in the ZeniMax group. I mean, I guess that's true, but Rich Lambert did out himself. We already knew he was leaving. And I honestly have no idea who this Ala Diaz person is. But this has now happened. We now know who was cut at the leadership team at ZOS. Earlier today, GameFile obtained from Maryland officials a breakdown of the 379 impacted roles, which extraordinarily included studio head. Microsoft later confirmed to GameFile which studio head that referred to, ZeniMax Online Studios. I really do appreciate GameFile's reporting here. This is some actual journalism, not just copy-pasting what everyone else is saying just to get clicks. They actually called people, they hunted down the information, so good job to them. And now, critically, we do know who the new studio head is going to be. Man, there's a lot of typos in here. Microsoft has since notified studio employees and internally announced new leadership. ZOS will now be run by Josh Henderson, previously head of business operations at the studio, and Nick Giacomini is staying on. He was promoted to game director last August. The layoffs have made people worry. Yes, we know that. They had a strike or a demonstration or something that was really going to do a lot. And then we already know this. ZOS Kevin said the plan is still to deliver great content. We'll hopefully have an update soon. And then this is something we have not seen before, though. In their note to the studio today, the outgoing leaders of ZeniMax Online Studios predicted growth for the game. And I have not been able to find this anywhere else. This does seem to be exclusive reporting from GameFile again. This is apparently what was in the note. "We have tremendous confidence in Josh and Nick, the future of this studio, and the continued growth of ESO." I mean, let's hope. With exciting experiences still ahead for our players as we wrap up work for Update 51 and beyond, we believe that your passion, creativity, and commitment to each other and the community will continue serving as the heartbeat of ESO. Just typical corporate boilerplate BS. So we now know all these people have been let go. The studio head, the studio operations director, the studio game director, the studio audio director, the studio art manager, the vice president and controller, and then the vice president of global sales and business development. Now, we do not know these are all from ZOS. They could be taken from Bethesda as well. Yeah, really good reporting. They actually got the documents and everything. So yeah, we do know there were a lot more people let go too, including animators, QA testers, apparently a creative director for the Elder Scrolls Online player life cycle. What does that even mean? Why was this a job? And apparently some of these people knew a while back that they were getting let go. And that's about it from GameFile. Now, this news has already been picked up on the forums, and we have received a response from ZOS Kevin. In a forum post about Burba and Kath leaving, ZOS Kevin had this to say: "Just wanted to follow up here. We're gathering as much info as we can when we can. We are more or less learning about this info in real time with you." Man, that's gotta suck. They don't know anything until we know it too. So there will be some delay before we can provide an update. Now, I do feel there are also some really essential things to cover in this forum thread. Like, this guy's asking, okay, Josh Henderson is now the studio head. What's actually the difference between studio head and head of business operations, which is what Josh Henderson did before? And he's saying, I just don't speak English good. That's why I don't know this. But it's not just your English, buddy. Gabriel H responds, oddly enough, that would be the exact same question the head of Xbox Gaming asked. This guy's asking again, what does it mean in the native language? Gabriel tries to clarify. You missed the point. When selecting people to be laid off, especially with a focus on cutting management, the head of Xbox Gaming who is signing off on the layoffs would have asked the exact same question. Slidress here is still asking, what does it mean? To which Gabriel H finally clarifies, that's my point. Those titles are entirely interchangeable, which they are. That doesn't mean they did the exact same roles, but there would be a lot of duplication. That's what I've been saying this whole time. There have been a lot of people at ZOS hiding behind their titles, pretending to be doing something unique just to get paid. And you just really can't have that when your whole overall thing, Xbox Gaming Studios, is kind of tanking, at least according to Asha Sharma's letter. You need things to be streamlined. And then people are just complaining about people being doomers versus bloomers, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that was basically all of the interesting stuff from the forum post. Then we do have another article that came out yesterday from the BBC. Not really sure why the BBC decided to cover this, but I'm glad they did. It's pretty interesting. The title is Xbox Workers Stunned After Jobs Bloodbath. And I'll just cover some excerpts from this. A lot of it doesn't have to do with ESO. This is basically based entirely around hearsay testimony from someone named Morgan Goen, who has a very interesting name given the circumstances. She's definitely Goen, but this is a lot of sour grapes. This is someone who was laid off. I don't know how seriously to take this, but there is some interesting commentary and insight. Blindsided. That was how game developer Morgan Goen felt when she found out she was being laid off from her job at Xbox-owned ZeniMax Online Studios last week. She was a senior encounter designer. I tried to figure out who this was, but I couldn't figure it out. She knew cuts were coming because Asha Sharma had released a memo saying she wanted to reset the business. Goen says she knew something was going to happen to somebody, but not who or how much. And it kind of sounds like she wished it had happened to someone else. And basically, her synthesis is wondering whether or not ZOS is going to be able to keep really developing ESO well. The BBC rightfully points out there was a lot of overhiring around COVID. Oh yeah, there was someone else that was interviewed here, Autumn Mitchell, who also seems to have wished that this had happened to someone else, not her. And this is really interesting. It says that they were part of the CWA, the Communication Workers of America Union, but that's not exactly true. ZOS was still in negotiation with Microsoft. They hadn't actually created a contract yet. That's why these layoffs could happen. Well, for instance, at Blizzard, they had an established union contract already, which is why we've seen basically no layoffs at Blizzard through all this. Nobody would tell them anything. They were expecting some of them might be hits, but they did not expect this scale. So now the critical part of this article is this person who was laid off, the encounter designer, says some disciplines within ZOS have been reduced to a quarter of what they were before, meaning they have a quarter of the people working on them. She says it will severely limit the team's ability to create new content. Now, again, I mean, what does she know? She was laid off, but it is worth paying attention to what she says. And this is her main quote. We're not going to be able to put out the same amount of content at the speed that we were, or anything approaching that, she says, which I find to be kind of weird wording. all the she's been laid off. Probably is still staying on for a couple months. I saw September is when these layoffs actually become effective, but it's not you anymore. You were laid off. There is no we. But this does not look good. Regardless of whether she was laid off or not, this is someone who was working at the company, was in an active development role, was actually creating things. And her analysis is they're not going to be able to put out content at the speed they were before, or in the quantity, or really anything approaching that, which seems to tip the scales more in favor of maintenance mode. But again, this is hearsay from one disgruntled laid off employee. And yeah, that's basically it. Now, let's take a quick look at Josh Henderson here, the new studio head. And we really don't know much about this guy. We have his picture and his pronouns. And we do know that he has been at ZOS for around 3 years. He started in a role called Business Planning and Analysis, though apparently he was also a studio director. These role names in corporate hierarchies are just so silly. But then starting last year, he became the head of business operations, which apparently means head of a team that has centralized the studio's outsourced development operations, budgeting and forecasting, purchasing, PO management. I don't know what PO management means. Someone tell me in the comments. Travel coordination and other admin functions. I really don't see why the studio needs someone in charge of figuring out, like, basically their travel agent. This line about outsourcing is interesting to me. I wonder if we're going to see more of that in the future of ESO. But basically, he is what would normally be called a COO, or a Chief Operations Officer. And in corporate culture, it's pretty common for the COO to take charge of the company after the CEO leaves. This is not too odd. I also find it interesting that he's not one of these veteran people at ZOS. He's only been there around 3 years. This does kind of go along with a trend I think I've been seeing, where these super long-term people at ZOS are being let go, probably because of their seniority, honestly, and for 2 reasons. 1, they're more likely to be part of the problem, and 2, they're more likely to be paid more than they're actually worth. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, Joe Burba is out, and that is shocking and a little bit concerning to me. Not that I was some huge fan of Joe Burba. He hardly ever showed his face. He did like 1 letter. We really didn't know what he was doing. But he was previously in charge of the live events. So I can only assume that it was his leadership that led to the pivot of more bite-sized content, trying to make the game into like an event roller coaster where there's always something new to do. And apparently that did not pay off. Having someone who's been focused on the business side of ZOS may be a good thing. But why this is concerning to me is getting a new studio director after just a little bit over a year. I think it was announced that Joe Burba was taking the role like July 3rd or something last year. It was earlier in the month, but it was during July. I mean, that just bespeaks total volatility at the highest levels of ZOS. The fact that they can't keep someone in leadership for a year is pretty concerning. Susan Kath, I mean, I'll just say no comment. I don't think the studio really needed her. She was kind of a good counterpoint to Nick Giacomini in the reveal streams, good cop, bad cop. But other than that, I don't know how necessary she was, how much that's going to impact the studio. But yeah, really what concerns me here is how this bespeaks just total instability in management at ZOS. And that combined with the disgruntled laid off developers saying we're not going to be able to create content the way we used to, I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens here. I'm definitely not a doomer. I think ESO will be around for years and be a lot of fun to play. But we may honestly be starting to see a Destiny 2 situation begin evolving here, where it took people a long time to admit Destiny 2 was going into decline. And now it is officially on maintenance mode. It's just really unclear what's going to happen in the future of ZOS, whether it's true that having a team the size that it was when they did Orsinium and Somerset means we'll get a similar quality of content, such as is implied by that statement. The volatility here is immense. I don't think anyone will miss Rich Lambert or Susan Kath. And honestly, no one's really going to miss Joe Burba, but it's just really bad optics to lose a studio head just over 1 year after he took the role. So yeah, really all I can say at this point is we will see what happens, and I will continue covering all the news and information as it comes out. In the comments, let us all know what you think about this recent news. Whether it confirms this is truly the beginning of the end for ZOS and ESO, whether it could be good, let us know all your thoughts in the comments. Also, I do want to draw your attention to the video I came out with earlier today, where I explore what it's like to get into Warframe again after 5 or 6 years. I can't remember how many it's actually been. I think I quit in 2021, but it may have been 2020. Point being, I'd love it if you check out that content. I am going to begin starting incorporating Warframe content into the channel. I've been playing the game and loving it like crazy. So I would appreciate if you check out that video, which is linked above, and let me know your thoughts in the comments there. Yeah, this is important news. I want to get it out to you. If you appreciate me being on the ball like that, please do like, hype, and sub. And during this time of volatility and uncertainty, I could really use your additional support by becoming a member of the Spokes Army. Check out the merch below the video, or go to my Fourth Wall site for a full catalog of merch. And on Fourth Wall, you can leave me a donation there, or you can leave donations here on YouTube in the form of super thanks. I am so grateful for all your support, but I'm even more grateful to God. We're going to finish up this video as we do with all videos with a prayer to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Lord Christ, thank you for the Elder Scrolls Online, for making it such a good game in so many ways. Lord, please do be with the studio at ZOS, be with the people left behind and those laid off, protect and preserve them and draw them closer to you. And Lord, please do send down your Holy Spirit upon my channel, help it grow and thrive, help me execute this pivot to adding Warframe content with smoothness and surety. And Lord, please do bless everyone in my community. Bless them in all ways in life, whether they believe or not. Draw them closer to you. Lord Christ, I give you all glory for this video and for my channel. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Thanks for watching until the end. Before you go, please do like, hype, comment, and subscribe. And when you do subscribe, turn on notifications, because I'll be back soon with new content.